Phantom Liberty is more than just a simple update or DLC in the ways that we've become accustomed to lately thanks to the steady sushi train of trash that we've been fed by big publishers lately. It's a rare and welcome good old-fashioned expansion that does more than just add content to the game, it actually transforms the experience that we already had to a far more complete version of Cyberpunk. A version, I dare say, I wish we had on first release. But despite CD Projekt Red following up and making huge improvements since its initial botched release 3 years ago, Cyberpunk still has some lingering problems, namely some game-breaking bugs, one of which I experienced towards the end of my playthrough, rendering all of my saves since when I started effectively unusable if I wanted to experience the game the way that CD Projekt Red intended. So I pretty much had to change gears midweek and refocus how I wanted to structure the video. I couldn't, in fact, produce the video I wanted, which was a comprehensive look at all of the new features. Instead, all I can really do is tell you guys about my impressions after completing the story 100% and experiencing some of the features the game has to offer. But I thought at least this way I'd be honest with you guys, that way you can decide whether or not you want to risk picking up the game now or instead maybe wait until they provide a patch that fixes this issue. I've already made CD Projekt Red aware of this problem and hopefully they'll get it patched sometime very soon. So in a moment, I'm going to take you guys first through my impressions of the gameplay introduced with Phantom Liberty and 2.0, and then I'm going to tell you guys about what I experienced without spoilers with the story, how I liked it, and why I still think Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty is still worth picking up once these issues are fixed. So if by the end of the video you think I helped you decide whether or not you want to pick up Phantom Liberty and you think I deserve it, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button to show your support and let me know that you want to see more videos like this. But one other way you can support me is by checking out the sponsor of today's video, Incogni. You probably already know that whenever you do something online, there's a huge number of companies that collect your personal information. Stuff like your address, your social security number, your employment history, etc. But what you might not know is that they actually buy, sell, and trade it. Some of those companies use that information to do things like adjust your credit score, or others for more nefarious purposes. Worst of all, if any of those companies get hacked, your identity could be at risk, which is what happened to me a couple years ago when my identity was stolen and tens of thousands of dollars were stolen out of my bank account. This is where Incogni can help. There are laws that allow you to force those companies to delete your data, and Incogni knows exactly how to use them. Their service automatically reaches out and applies the appropriate law and language to get those data companies to remove your data. I just signed up and found out that there were over 90 companies with my personal information, so no wonder I keep getting invited to join these annoying scam investor groups. So if you want to just be a little bit more sure that your personal information isn't getting into the wrong hands, or maybe you just want to stop getting a few of those annoying spam emails, get your personal data off the internet today with the sponsor Incogni. Just head on over to incogni.com/morphologist and use my code morphologist to get 60% off an Incogni purchase. And don't worry, if you don't like it, you can always take advantage of Incogni's 30-day money-back guarantee. Again, that's incogni.com/morphologist and use code morphologist to get 60% off your order. So my intention is not to lead you guys on with this bug. Most people click off the video less than halfway through, so if you leave with anything, I want you to leave with the big issue that I experienced with Cyberpunk. After I finished the main story 20 hours into my playthrough, which by the way isn't a count of how many hours you get out of this update, it's got a lot more features in it. I just didn't have time to go through every side quest. I hardly did any of them, I just went straight for the story. I discovered that when I left Dogtown, which is the new area of Cyberpunk that they added in with Phantom Liberty, none of the police responded to anything that I did. There was some kind of issue that was caused by me entering Dogtown towards the beginning of my playthrough because I went back and I checked my saves. It happened pretty much right after I entered, which causes them not to recognize me. I sense, or I guess, that this is to do with the way the game switches off the NCPD when you enter Dogtown, which is supposed to be its own little precinct that's separate from the rest of the city. It's like a city within a city, if you will, governed by a completely different organization. So somehow, whatever they did to switch the NCPD off broke the game for me, and it stayed off for the rest of the game after I entered it, with no way to fix the problem without playing through the entire game again from the beginning. And this is doubly disappointing because one of the new features with Phantom Liberty and the free 2.0 update is how police will now chase you, and how Max Tech, the 5th level of being wanted, is incredibly challenging and cool, which I didn't get to experience outside the story, which is so disappointing. But I'll go more into the story in a bit. First, I want to talk to you guys about the features added in with the Phantom Liberty and 2.0 update. So Phantom Liberty is releasing alongside the new 2.0 update for Cyberpunk. This is an update that adds a bunch of features that were missing from release to the base game if you already own it, which means for one, vehicle combat. This is something that I think everybody noticed was missing from the base game, aside from being in cutscenes, which was supremely disappointing. Now, just like we were promised and we thought before the game released, you can shoot from your car or from your motorcycle and even use things like swords and bats to sideswipe people with your bike. This was definitely a must-have feature, and I have to say that it's implemented really well. It's only kind of difficult to drive though when you're shooting if you're in first person, but it would be that way in real life anyway, so I suppose that's fine. The next thing is the police system. Now, the police were kind of a meme in Cyberpunk. They just appeared out of nowhere in the original game, but now, not so much. They actually patrol the streets both on foot and in their cars, and they will chase you. And if you keep pissing them off, they'll actually start to get a little bit more tactful about how they try to apprehend you. They also have an interesting system of responding to reports of violence. So if you commit some kind of crime, the police show up and they have to try to find you before they'll actually engage you. So you can hide from the police after you commit a crime and get away with it, which is completely different than the way the game worked before. Before, if you committed a crime, the police would just appear and there was no way to get away from them aside from just running some arbitrary distance away, which was kind of disappointing for a game that's supposed to be so immersive and detailed. And as if these two systems weren't transformative enough, there's also the new perk system, which ties into everything. The perk system has been completely redone from the original game. Now it's a lot more balanced and interesting, and I would say that it tries to encourage you to do more mixed builds and actually makes things like stealth worth doing, with interesting perks and an effective use of stealth in a lot of missions where before it was kind of a waste of time and it was more efficient to just run and gun through pretty much every single mission in the game. Which leads me to cyberware and how armor's been reworked. Cyberware, or cybernetics, is a huge cornerstone of the cyberpunk genre, of the world that was made by Michael Pondsmith. Now the game more closely follows the way it's supposed to work in lore, where your body can only handle so much cyberware when you start off. You can expand its ability to take on more cyberware as you progress through the game and unlock certain perks, but now there's a hard limit. And cyberware is now also tied to armor. Before, clothing was your primary source of protection, and you can still get some clothing that protects you or adds some buffs, but it's primarily now based on what cybernetics you attach to you. If you want to be badass, you gotta be chromed out. And this is definitely much more cyberpunk feeling, so I like these changes in general. It just makes the game feel a little bit more immersive, and it makes the progression in the game feel a lot more tangible. And then they've got more subtle changes, like the changes to stamina, which are now more tied to your weapons firing instead of running. And Ripper Docs now have a new UI setup, which is much better looking than the original game. Even better for people who like immersion, there's now an animation that plays every time you go and get new cybernetics, which is what happened at the beginning of the game in the original release, but just disappeared afterwards. So clearly this was something that they always imagined having in the whole game, but probably ran out of time to do. So it's cool to see them finally get this in. And that's just what they're telling us. I've been keeping track of people posting on Twitter and in my Discord, and there are other things that they added that they didn't tell us about, like additions to the base story and little expansions and added details that really enhance the whole experience, making playing the game from the beginning, as they actually recommend, totally worth doing even if you've already played the game before. And then there's the DLSS 3.5 update, which really enhances the lighting in the game quite a bit. There are new tech that they're doing with ray tracing to make it run not only better, but have more ray bounces, utilizing AI to fill in the edges. Really is amazing. Unfortunately though, it's not perfect. It definitely falls apart in some places. You start to see sparkles in dark areas where the AI is not able to figure out where it's supposed to be doing light bounces, but it was a problem that I only experienced in a few places, so it definitely didn't get in the way of me enjoying the experience or being blown away by the visual fidelity of Cyberpunk's new update. But certainly your experiences will vary. This is supposed to work on all RTX cards starting from the 20 series, but I don't think it's going to run super well on the 20 series, so I've got a 4090, that's what you're seeing here, and I can't guarantee this for everybody. Now, all of that on its own could have become a paid DLC by any other publisher, so I appreciate that CD Projekt Red, in an effort to regain the trust of their fans, made this free. It was a great move, and I'm very happy to see them do it. What's great though is that that's only the free update. The content in Phantom Liberty makes this even better. So the new Phantom Liberty gameplay and ending starts off with you going to Dogtown after you finish the Act 1 quest. You need to do a couple things in order for you to get in contact with Somi, which is the person who introduces you to this whole quest line and enables you to enter the new part of Pacifica. The start of the story basically is her offering you a carrot on the stick, saying that if you help her, she could help you fix your relic problem, which is the new key to the new ending that you'll get if you continue down this storyline. The whole design of this area is really cool, and it gives you this completely different feeling to the game after you enter it. It's nothing like Night City. It feels like an entirely different part of the world. And that's thanks to the former Colonel Kurt Hansen, who runs the whole place. He stayed after the Unification Wars, which was a war started by the NUSA to reunify the United States back to its former glory. He felt betrayed by the NUSA retreating after Arasaka's troops landed and tried to push them back from Night City, and stayed to build his own little castle inside of Pacifica, which is called Dogtown. This section of the city is now run and controlled by former Militech personnel, which have a bunch of high-end kit, which is why Arasaka wasn't able to push them out. And this is important to know because it kind of tells you the story of the people who are inside of Dogtown. It's not just the former Militech army that was trying to take over Night City, it's also criminals who are trying to escape the NCPD, or people trying to escape the corporate world after backstabbing the wrong person or just getting on someone's shit list. But it being effectively run by a totalitarian dictator means that the state of things inside of Dogtown isn't great. It's run down. It feels like a third world country that's been bombed out from war, and that's kind of how it was left after the Unification Wars. He's done basically nothing to try to restore and enhance the people who live there's lives, aside from the people who are immediately close to him. He lives in a partially complete high-rise building complete with gold-cladded walls. He doesn't care really about the people outside of there unless they're part of his own military organization called Barghest, who is effectively the kind of military police that you'll encounter inside of Dogtown. But they're not the NCPD, trust me. They don't care if you commit crime so long as you don't commit crime against them. But before you head on off and do the main quest, there's a bunch of side quests and gigs that you can start off and try to complete, which have their own side stories, one involving Mr. Hands, which continues on alongside the main story if you choose to follow it. But you'll also be able to get new things like unlocking the new Relic skill tree, which gives you some brand new abilities separate from the base game in the 2.0 update. And you also got a bunch of new weapons, which you'll see pop up throughout your playthrough if you just stick to the story, or you'll find as you just explore and do gigs, and they can be really neat. One of my favorite weapons I found was actually through the main storyline, which was this really unique sniper rifle, which is really powerful, but importantly, just looks really cool. They also added a bunch of new vehicles to the game. Some of them are also combat-oriented with weapons mounted to them, including a new vehicle that you can buy that is basically an APC with rocket launchers and an MG on it, and that thing is awesome. Definitely worth picking this up if you get the money through your playthrough. But hey, I also like the derpy little Jeep you get for free at the start of the game, so that's fun as well. It fits really well with Dogtown. So those vehicles, alongside a lot of the new clothing that they added in, really start to fill out the world of Cyberpunk a lot better. It makes it feel a bit more immersive because you see less repetition, you see more variety. So if you're looking to start Cyberpunk for the first time, I definitely recommend picking up Phantom Liberty. But aside from the kind of main gigs that you're used to seeing in the base game, if you've played it before, they've also added some open world activities involving the new car mechanic systems called courier missions, where you're tasked with stealing a vehicle, and this is kind of a random thing that happens around the world, where you're rewarded for stealing it and bringing it back with minimal damage. While you're doing so though, you're going to have to fend off people who want the vehicle back, which can involve some police chases as well if you end up crossing their path. But I didn't get to experience it myself because the police were broken for me, which I've already shared. They also introduced a really strange mechanic that I wasn't expecting called airdrops, and this is really reminiscent of battle royales, and I suppose it sort of fits with Dogtown. Dogtown feels like a setting for a battle royale, where if you see something drop from the air, you can go and try to collect it, and usually it contains something really valuable, including a skill shard to further enhance your character's abilities. So it really makes it worth going and doing if you see it happen. The only downside to this is that it's not procedural. It sometimes happens in the same location multiple times in a row, which can start to feel a little bit too repetitive. So I hope that they kind of mix it up a little bit, maybe add a few more areas for it to drop, or just fix the coding in the way that it deploys the airdrop so that it feels more diverse as you play through. Returning to the main story though, after you enter Dogtown at the behest of the new character Song Mi, you're tasked with helping to save the president of the NUSA who just crashed inside of the city. And I know this might be a bit of a minor spoiler if you didn't see any of the previews, but it happens pretty much right away and is the setup again for this whole thing. From here on out, I'm going to try to avoid referring to specific events so that you can experience everything for yourself. And I'm also going to try to avoid showing you guys any visuals that spoil the story itself. So after you continue on with the story, you get introduced to a bunch of new characters. One of them, of course, being Idris Elba. Of course, he's in this. He's on pretty much all of the titles for this game. And it leads you down this winding rabbit hole of spy thriller intrigue with people whose motivations are never quite what they seem. But for all the characters that you meet, they're all really well done. They feel like living and breathing, conflicted, gray characters who maybe in some cases are trying to do the right thing, but are just too broken to see the truth for what it is. And in true cyberpunk fashion, the story tries to challenge your ideas of what really matters, if there truly is a thing such as a loyalty to a country or loyalty to a cause. Is it misplaced? Are you being used by somebody who's trying to manipulate you? The story has a lot of layers for you to peel back to help you make the better decision for you, but as I discovered towards the end, sometimes there are no good choices. There are only less evil ones. The meaning of the title Phantom Liberty starts to make a lot more sense as you get to that grand buildup of the finale of the ending. And all the while you're playing through this story, you're going through some amazingly well-designed and put-together set pieces which tie well into the story and really sell the immersion and feeling of being in this universe. One of my favorite locations was this underground facility that you go to that involves some pretty scary interactions. So if you really like the world of cyberpunk and the lore of it, you're really going to enjoy this part, but I don't want to ruin it. So you're just gonna have to play through and find that particular location that I'm talking about. Eventually though, when it culminates in the crescendo, the last mission of the series, you're given a choice to choose between one of the characters that you've met, and your decision will affect the end of the story alongside all the other decisions you made up until that point. You'll get a completely different location and a different story ending if you choose to do this, so choose wisely, or play it twice. But believe it or not, there's actually an additional part to this ending that happens following the main culmination, the crescendo of all the missions. And this is where you're given a choice to commit to the very end or to choose a different ending. So if this is your first playthrough, you can still back out towards the very end of this and choose to try an alternate ending if you don't like where this is going. And the game is going to tell you this. Without spoiling what this ending means, I think it fits fantastically into all of the endings you get. Each ending for V has a different meaning. And this particular ending, I think, really asks the question of life and whether a life's quality matters. And it's very much parallel to the other ending that you choose in a very poetic way. But overall then, with the Phantom Liberty update alongside the 2.0 update and all of the features that they add in with both of these updates, it makes Cyberpunk a far more fleshed out and game worth playing if you've never played Cyberpunk before, or even if you've played it before and you set it down. It adds so much to the experience, not just the new part of the game in Phantom Liberty, but the entire experience. It makes it worth playing all over again, and it feels genuinely like a familiar place you're going back to, but different. It's a bit of a weird sensation because it's so much different than what we had before, but it's different in all positive ways. But like I said at the beginning, it's not without its problems, and so if you're a bit worried about experiencing a game-breaking bug like I did, you might want to wait just a little bit until they get that thing patched. But otherwise, this is a very solid experience, and I can highly recommend it with confidence after they fix this bug. Because for me, it kind of sucks that I have to play through the entire thing again just to be able to start to build out my character the way I want. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it informative. And if you did, let me know down in the comment section below. Otherwise, hope to see you guys in the next one.